Hi, everyone. Welcome to the January 2024 Carmine Street Metrics Zoom reading, the beginning of our fourth year of holding readings on Zoom. We have three fantastic readers today: Rebecca O'Connor, Marjorie Maddox, and Ralph Adamo. So without further words from me, which we don't need, we'll start with our open mic. Now, with the first open mic reader, I don't think she's here actually. Is Charlotte Innes, are you here? I don't see her.
I'm here.
You
I'm
are.
here.
Oh, good. Just in the nick of time. Wait, now, yeah, great.
I couldn't get on. I had a hard time getting on. So, but
Oh, okay.
I figured it out in the end.
So take it away, Charlotte.
Okay. All right. Oops. This is a very recent poem. It's called Later. You'll notice the urge to stop, to listen for birds, look out for skunks and possums. Are there any? You'll find that small things matter. A child's delight in crackling leaves and how that takes you back to the aftermath of trees on fire. Fire igniting life in seeds, the thin white stems of sprouts that push through ashen soil towards the light, the damp they need to grow and breathe. Maybe you'll long for what you maybe had, a love who burrows through your darkest thoughts to a tenderness he knows is hidden there, a drop of water moistening stone. You'll know by then that water's always moving and why you often thought you might have drowned. You might not know, even by the end, if there's a stone you might have rolled away beyond these dried up marks you dribble across the page, this little, trying to be large.
Thank you, Charlotte. Next is, let's see, Leslie Monsour.
Hello. I brought a poem. Let's see, something's in my screen, but okay. Sorry. I'm going to read a poem about my recent trip to Western Ireland. And I recently read it to my 93-year-old next door neighbor, and she told me it was calming. So that's something that could be useful. Heard at Bolivar, recollected in California. The silence was superb at summer's end. The crows were elsewhere on the sunny bay. The pasture and the hills, a greeny blend of grasses in the stillness of midday. The cattle in the center of the field were all that could be heard, their tug and munch, a syncopated chant of herbal yield, their universe a pasture bright with lunch. The quiet rhythm of the afternoon could almost put the whole world in a trance. Thus it occurred to me to hum a tune as I stood yards away outside the fence. The curly-coated Galloways, young steers brought up for beef, lifted their faces one by one, bright yellow tags pinned to their ears, and listened, moving towards me in the sun. I thought of Helios's sacred cattle, the foolish sailors on a killing spree. I heard the lapping tide where puffins paddle, and thought about the isle at Innisfree. And then I sang the song of wandering Angus, the Angus kin to Galway's curly coat, and Yeats the poet who wrote about and sang us tales of mystic Celtic anecdote. Today I summon Yeats's deep heart's core, the peaceful herd at Galway's glassy bay, come grace the groves of oak and sycamore in these dry hills 5,000 miles away. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. That was beautiful. And next is Claudia Gary. If you could.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Nice to see you all. This is a memory from childhood, and it's one of two poems that will soon appear in Pulse Beat. Under the grand piano. Some days it was a playhouse with stubby shelves for me while she played Debussy. I sheltered like a stray mouse in comfort and in tune, absorbing Claire de Lune. The damper pedals hiccup, allowed a little wave of sound to misbehave. Sitting on knees, I'd pick up my canisters of beads to find what a mouse needs for serving cakes to Mozart and watching mother's feet. The afternoon complete, I could feel every note start, reverberating tones massaged my growing bones. From time to time, I'd speak up from under everything and volunteer to sing. A miniature teacup vibrated on the wood where each crescendo stood. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Next is Roxanne Hoffman.
The Wright brothers. Given to mischief, Orville was once expelled, but could his father have predicted his older Wilbur would be so compelled? For some years I've been afflicted with the belief that flight is possible by man. What most men only dare dream, his boys would plan. Was it the hockey stick that struck Will's face at 8, or the toy brought back from France, propelling fate? Made of bamboo cork and paper with a rubber band, flown and flown until it could fly no more. Then they made their own invention soar. As men, they would glide over dunes of sand, expanding their knowledge, honing their skill, to unlock the secret of flight, their thrill.
Thank you, Roxanne. Okay, so we'll have our first feature now, who is Rebecca O'Connor. And Rebecca lives in rural Ireland and is co-director of The Moth. She's the recipient of many awards. They're listed in her bio that you might have had time to read, but I'll mention a few. The Jeffrey Dearmer Prize from Poetry Review, the New Writing Ventures Poetry Award. Her pamphlet, Poems, was published by the Wordsworth Trust, where she was writer-in-residence in 2005. And her debut collection, We'll Sing Blackbird, was shortlisted for the Irish Times Shine Strong Award. So then her work's been shortlisted for a long list of awards that I won't read. You can see it in her bio. And of course, she's been published widely in The Guardian, The Irish Times, The Spectator, The Stinging Fly, of course, and numerous others. And she's also published an award-winning novel, He Is Mine, I Have No Other, that was published in 2018 and shortlisted for the Kate O'Brien Award. So, Rebecca, there we are.
Hi, thank you so much, Wendy and Anton, and thanks to Therese for inviting me to read. I'm really chuffed to be here. I'm in rural Ireland in a place called Cavan, which is famous for its lakes, 365, one for every day of the year. So I'm going to start with a poem called The Lakes from my collection, We'll Sing Blackbird. The wet here can break a person's heart with sheer persistence. Imagine one day your husband's beard smells of damp dog. His long johns stink of pondweed, and you think nothing or very little of it. until one day you wake to find him looking up at you with wet spaniel eyes. That's what it's like, an endless incoming tide. The trick is to give him plenty of exercise. And the next few poems I'm going to read are ones I've written quite recently, so which will hopefully be in a new collection that will hopefully be out in the next year or two. This first one is called Sacre-Cœur. He gave a rose to each of the women dining in his father's restaurant that night, then a dozen to me, to let me know how serious he was about us. The interior was lit like a Pierre Agile postcard. His English was terrible. My French was terrible. We made up for it by being young and uncomfortable in our skin. He had a quiff like James Dean, but he was much better looking. He wanted to join the police. There was something frightening about him. He would never take his t-shirt off, for one thing. I think his father may have been a criminal, but he had such suave 1970s Oscar-winning eyes. Come to think of it, maybe all men looked that way that summer. Something to do with the unwavering heat. Because I remember Robert McLean Wilson reading in a bookshop in Rue de Rivoli, like he too was making an Oscar speech. He had to stand halfway up the staircase, just beyond reach. The next two poems are set during lockdown. This first one is myself and my young son in bed, sick with COVID and watching YouTube videos about nature mostly, so sick bed. My son just wants to find something bigger, like a buzzard or a pine marten, that he can nurse back to health. I keep my eyes closed throughout the man feeding cockroaches to his spiders, mostly because I feel too tired and or sick to open them. It's like being stuck in the corridor of a mental asylum. I can feel the glass partitions closing in. I can hear the click as the thorax splits. Look, Mom, look. I never could eat while watching insects on screen, just being in the same room as them. Not that I'm eating now, but I feel the gag reflex anyway, like when that nurse with a face shield like a roach took a swab from the back of my throat. The lobster won't pinch Coyote no matter how he tries to coerce it. Eventually he finds one in a restaurant tank and it damn near breaks his fingers. My name is Coyote Peterson and I'm about to enter the sting zone with the murder hornet, the bullet ant. Last night it was the tarantula hawk, like a taser dart. I can't move my arm. He's writhing on the ground. I think I'm going to cry, he says, but Coyote Peterson doesn't cry. The wasp paralyzes the spider and lays a single egg on its sternum. So the hatched larva's first meal is living through the worst kind of existential pain. Now look, Coyote's raking up bloodworms from a muddy estuary in Maine. The worm mouth shoots out like a rectal prolapse and spews green pus onto his fingers. Be brave, stay wild. My son is so beautiful. He suffers because he recognizes pain in others. He doesn't shirk from it. Why am I always sick, he asks me. I'm exhausted from lying here listening to him talk. He never stops talking. I tried to give Kevin CPR with my finger, he says. I know you did, love, I say. You did everything you could. This poem is called Still and Quiet Things. Somewhere in the Midlands, a newly bereaved husband sits watching television with his 3 small children. A couple plants Jerusalem artichokes on their allotment in Zone 6. Up and down a street in Bromley, a window cleaner overhears family arguments. In Wiltshire, a woman and her daughter collect potting compost from molehills on the village green. A man in Coventry finishes his thesis on bats. Eggs are delivered to the neighbours. Campers moved on from Flynn's Pass. In Honolulu, An elderly lady completes the first draft of her book about her murdered friend while her husband teaches online. A woman plucks a stray hair from her nose. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a girl wonders if they will ever mail her that tweed hat she left behind. Mules stand in a field. A man in Bray posts a picture of an object he has thrown up into the sky. A boy falls off his bike and breaks his leg. Lilac grows. Two small children sleep in a teepee in the living room. Their mother is one of the first people in Naples to get a haircut. In California, a man films his husband playing the piano. A family's new puppy shits in the kitchen again. A woman in Glasgow is told not to set foot outside her door for 12 weeks. Food parcels are delivered. Teenagers make love in the back seat of a car. On the island, a woman walks through the woods in her Wellingtons and a kimono. A farmer tears out 200 meters of nesting hedgerow. Ponds are built. An origami eagle. A vet straightens a surfer's broken nose on Pendine Beach. A boy finds a crayfish in the lake. His younger sister falls head first out of the boat. Someone's ex dies. A girl poses in her parents' backyard. A young woman records birdsong outside her Leighton window. A mother of two small children is told her tumor is inflamed. Her husband cycles 3 times around the lake. In upstate New York, her sister pins a rhinoceros beetle in a display case. Twin girls run naked through a large house. A couple kiss in front of his painting in their studio in Szczecin. Funeral services are broadcast live. In downtown Toronto, an aunt sits in her apartment surrounded by her life's work. A hare runs the circuit of a yellow field. A radiologist cancels outpatients. A man cooks a lone steak on a barbecue. Someone pays €10 for a tape of other voices to harmonize with. A sculptor chips away at a stone horse. A teacher praises her students' meticulousness. Children look blankly at their grandparents' faces. I'll just finish with this poem about a little bat that we found in our house. Pipistrelle. Her wing feels like bright air. She hisses when I stroke it. There's no sign of injury, but she won't unfold. I divine water from a pipette, squash flies for her. But I read she can eat up to 3,000 a night, so we switch to maggots instead. They squirm damson in a jam jar, reek of rotting whatever it is they feed them in the pet shop. I'm told fishermen sometimes pop them in their mouths to make them wriggle, but I don't love her that much. Instead, the children chop them up and dangle the bits of sushi before her tiny head. She has a bite so ferocious it propels her from the box, right out, little flipperty-gibbet, pug-face, piglet, so that she lands face down next to the pepper grinder, where I study her little teeth, magnified through my reading glasses, as she chomps a squiddy wad in her mouth, fiendish and comical. We take her outside and open the box, and she boulders up my jumper, all bony fingers and thumbs. I have to pry her off. When my back's turned, she flies. Is that it? Was she not hurt at all? Just frightened of us? Later, I pare my verruca, varnish it with acid, so the little pricks of black blood stand out like firing squads. The moon is still orange. I can't believe she just left me here, to die or to live. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Let's all unmute to show our appreciation for Rebecca's reading. That was very nice. Thank you.
Great. Lovely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I'm going to move on to our next open mic reader, who is Robbi Nestor.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay. Watching Pins after a photograph by Sal Taylor Kidd. The mind is always brewing something, tracing shape-shifting menageries in clouds. Any plain ingredients, flour, water, and a bit of yeast and salt plus time can rise to the occasion, becoming a new thing. So a handful of steel pins dropped on a table spurs the mind to summon forces far beyond itself. As sages once scanned the entrails of a bird, thrown sticks or tea leaves at the bottom of a cup for wisdom that could change a nation or affect a life. What emerges depends upon the mind at work. Maybe a strategy to solve a city's traffic woes, a way to plan political maneuvers, or a play in sports. Philosophy and science are full of sudden insights of this sort. Like Newton's apple, Archimedes bending over water, rising in a tub. The chemist Auguste Kekule learned the benzene atom structure from the sudden vision of a snake swallowing its tail. In the pandemic, when the rules of ordinary life were all suspended and time became the most plentiful commodity, we could stare at nothing like a cat intent on tracking birds outside the window. People look back on their lives, hoping to mend old rifts, contacting former friends or enemies, the quarrels long forgotten. We changed like dough rising at the back of a warm stove. Sequestered in our homes, we braided our loose threads into a pattern, wrote plays, made a family, discovered special gifts we didn't know we had, found power at the tips of our own fingers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Robbi. Next is Denise. Let me spotlight you, Denise LaNeve.
The beginning of the poem starts off with the explanation of what an acronym that spells out paprika. Potentially all pairwise rankings of all possible alternatives. Paprika is a method for multi-criteria decision-making, MCDM. So they say, in such a strange way too, this acrimonious acronym, whatever its definition, reminds me more of triage. Paprika is just more words shrunk to letters, an example of movable, collapsible meanings, like PAP for paparazzi, a post a picture, a prion amyloid protein, though for me it applies to an unpronounceable medical procedure that scrapes along the firm, fibrous cervical wall to expose nefarious cells, hiding in the density of my tissues, addressing all women's fears, my fear of loss. And should RIP translate to research in progress or retirement income plan, rather than best wishes for death's sad state? I long to hear the eloquence of words, a vowel sonance, a consonant's articulation on the tongue between lips, a clarity of meaning. Will I soon have to learn new English, or will my voice grow increasingly silent? Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Robbi. Paul Nash let's see. Will be next.
Okay. This is entitled The View from the Oak. Mediterranean truffles spread throughout the root system of an ancient white oak. Ectomycorrhizal fruiting bodies of Ascomyceti fungi thriving in cool, loamy, calcareous soil, constituting the rhizosphere, the continuum between intra and intercellular colonizations of obligate mycorrhizal symbionts. And hold the phosphorus, please. We'll have none of that, thank you. Pigs and dogs are trained to utilize their highly evolved olfactory senses to detect volatile organic compounds emanating from subterranean macrofungi deep beneath the forest floor, picking up whispers of poetry within the complex molecular dialogue among soil, fauna, vegetation, and microbial life. Consumed in ancient times by Babylonians, Etruscans, Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, not to mention the lost nomadic hunter-gatherer tribes of Pleistocene age, Ice Age, antiquity. Truffles evoke racial memories of an antediluvian biodiverse world amidst the fading ecological synthesis of the Anthropocene epoch. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Paul. Next is Amy Small-McKinney. Yeah, Small-McKinney. I got it.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to read a poem, an old one from 2013 that was in an anthology called Voices from the Porches. The porch. 2 evergreens taller than the house have grown beyond this porch, taller than the second floor. Here I'm not afraid. It is true. Only at night can the twister inside return. Here the porch is solid, well built. Everything solid, until I think of Allie, who after Paul's preventable death volunteered to feed soldiers thousands of miles away. She returned from her stint as someone else determined to die, and she did. Here, mushrooms the size of dessert plates grow in pairs. Where do I belong? From the beginning, the air told me the white wicker bench with silk pillows is enough. Stink bugs and frogs below, enough. Don't listen for footsteps that ask you to care. Meanwhile, hummingbirds battle for sugared water. They disappear and return, I suppose, to their secreted nest. I made the mistake of reading a headline. Novelist reports rape. She will be listened to, unlike a maid from Guinea. I imagine that here, by the mountain, hurt is expected and understood. I listen to the hummingbird's warning. The river below is impossible to find without directions. My body curls into the wicker. I don't know my country anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, we're going to, I'm going to introduce in a minute our second feature, who is Marjorie Maddox. Before that, let me say, I think I did introduce myself. I'm Wendy Sloan for Carmine Street Metrics, and my co-host, one of 2 other co-hosts of Carmine Street Metrics, is here today, of course, Anton Yakovlev. And as Rebecca O'Connor mentioned, there's a third co-host, Therese Coe, who unfortunately was unable to be here today, and we all miss her very much. But she's here in spirit. So, okay, let me introduce Marjorie Maddox, who's a professor of English at Lock Haven University. She's published 14 collections of poetry, and including several award-winning collections, especially for her ekphrastic collaborations. She has several really interesting ekphrastic collaborations. One called Heart Speak is spoken for with photographer Karen Elias. and Museum of My Daughter's Mind, a collaboration with her artist daughter, Anna Lee Heffer. And there are several other artists, Greg Mort, Margaret Munch Loach, and so on. Marjorie has also written a number of children's books, award-winning children's books, and young adult books. And she is the co-editor of Commonwealth, a contemporary poets on Pennsylvania, and the forthcoming Keystone Contemporary Poets on Pennsylvania as well. She's the editor also of Presence. So let's see, Marjorie. We will now.
Thank you very much, Wendy and Anton, and both Robbi and Amy are in those anthologies. So that's exciting that they're both here. And am I spotlighted? Am I good to go? Okay. Okay. As it works out, I think this is a nice poem to follow Amy's poem, and especially the last line of her poem. And this is from the book Begin with a Question. As you know, we just passed January 6th, which it not only is that, of course, the storming of the Capitol, but it's also the Feast of the Epiphany. So this is called Epiphany. And so they rushed the steps and bashed the doors. With windows smashed, the winter light breaks in. Forgotten is the frankincense, the myrrh, the gold the wise men brought. Instead, our kin or neighbors storm the halls. We recognize their faces, tense with hate. In different form, they look a bit like us. Yet we surmise this mob that waves its flags, together swarms toward House or Senate, cannot live so near. We say hello on walks, they guard our homes. This is the hard epiphany we fear. The ones we loathe and love might be the same. And that bright star, we find the manger bare, except for all our anger swaddled there. And then I'm going to read a couple poems from one of the books that Wendy mentioned. So this is in the Museum of My Daughter's Mind, and there are 18 poems about my daughter's paintings. And then, as Wendy mentioned, a number of poems about an exhibit from the American Visionary Arts Museum in Baltimore, which includes Greg Mort, Margaret Munch-Losch, and a number of others. And this is my daughter's painting on the cover. So we'll do this instead of the PowerPoint. But one of the things that I particularly am intrigued about by her painting is that she weaves words throughout. And I'm not sure if you can see them throughout, but there are a number of words. And what I've done in a lot of the paintings, particularly the pantoums, is to take these words that are within the painting and italicize them and kind of weave them throughout. There's also a lot of shifting of perspective. So this at first looks like a library room, but then you can see it becomes the top of a building. And there's another chair over here that you can see that kind of mirrors things. So there's a lot of shifting of perspectives and a lot of questioning about the role of the artist in society. So I'm going to read a poem in here that is rather abstract and has all these different. This is actually a huge painting. It's about 20 foot by, I don't know, 15 feet. And there's a lot of images, kind of what Alice in Wonderland kind of images, and a lot of questions within it. First of all, even though it's so huge, it says, don't look. So there's that kind of contradiction. And then there's a lot of questions in there. Why would I lie to you? Why would I tell you the truth? And it again kind of asks this idea of, are you supposed to believe the reality that the artist is creating? Or is this something that you're going to ignore? So those kind of phrases are italicized throughout. So I'll try to emphasize them a little bit. Your move. Why would I lie to you? The sun glimmers like a lost pocket watch melting. See how it drips radiance into each shadow shade of thought, each mountain ravine, each swirling field of grass arching toward evergreen. Follow the hair wherever. Better late than never, never falling from here to there. Watch your step. Inside the mind, another landscape erupts, oversized, shrunk, all meaning slanted. Why would I tell you the truth? The missing pieces are yours for the choosing. King or pawn, roll the dice and pick a card to view the other side of story. Daily the Queen of Hearts rages. Why would I lie to you? Survival is a decision of the soul. One square forward, one square back, one square diagonal, one square sideways. Here, there, nowhere. What will you make of this empty space? The deserted chessboard filling quickly with choice. Time is up. The wild sky is falling. Why would I tell you the truth? Or rising with the flares that you've ignited, your luminous lines and arrowed signs leaning to destinations far beyond this canvas, where the surreal whirls of vision of green that keeps the world swaying. Don't look up, down, here, there, where. Just breathe. Don't look. Just keep seeing what's right behind the stars, the skin, the Cheshire's grin. Why would I lie to you? Your move. And then here is one that is not in form. A lot of the poems in this book are in fixed form. And I think because many of the pieces are abstract, that fixed form kind of gave me a container to put some of these in. But this does have a sense of rocking movement, and I'm not sure if you can see, but each line ends with 2, so it's kind of precarious that it's tilting over. Here's the image. Maybe you can see it. Can you see that? It's really a sense of motion, and this is called the arc. And my daughter talks about it's unclear if the ladders lead up or down, and if you're going towards the whirl or if you're trying to escape it. Arc. Ladders to below, to above, to turn off the faucet, to weeping, to turn on the spigot, to here now, to unleash the liquid, to water, to weary, to whiplash, to swirl in the iris of horizon, to witness the wet of windswept, to hide in the eye of reject, to float in the drowning of hopeless, to breathe in the rattling of broken, to gasp with the mouth of ocean, to curl with the swish of sudden, to gulp with the swirl of twisters, to swallow with the salt of senseless, to blur with the vision of serpents, to spew with the sputum of whales, to reek with the regurgitation of Jonah, to sink in the rise of remorse, to know with the blind eye of Noah, to soar on a dry sky with dove, to circle the submersion of world, to flutter and hover, to dive and to discover, to finally land. And I love this is the last one I'll read from this book. I love the story behind this one. And I don't think I would have had a way in if I hadn't heard this story. You can see kind of, again, that sense of swirling. There's all these little E's around the edge. And my daughter talks about a time where she was teaching a young child about the letter E, and the child interrupted her and asked, a question that was completely off topic. And both my daughter and this young child got reprimanded for talking about something other than the letter E. So here's a villanelle, the letter E. Don't distract me with questions, those extraneous detours that topple learning. E and only E is today's lesson. The enemy of schedules is curiosity, omissions necessary for well-paced delivery. We yearn for no distractions. Don't ask me questions, time-wasting, silly digressions of how and why. Pay attention. Our concern is E and only E. Today's lesson is letter 5. Your inquisitive obsessions are enemies of order. Don't ruin class by distracting me with questions. Creativity's the one transgression I won't allow. Sit still, don't squirm. E and only E is today's lesson. Up next, the letter F, natural progression of learning. Quiet, it's not your turn to talk. Don't distract me with questions. E and only E is today's lesson. And then I'm going to read two poems from a book that I just found out is going to be published at the in fall, end of fall 2022, which is called Seeing Things and deals with a number of things, including my mother's beginning stages of depression, some of the things that I've been through, and then also some of the things that my daughter has struggled with, including depression. So this first one, I'm going to see if I can get a larger version of it so I can read it from the screen. Hashtag me too. And a sonnet. Today our words stick in the click of keys, reshape their sounds. It's hard to mourn a past you've thrown away without an elegy to mark its pain. And yet all grief outlasts the syllables we grab to make a poem that looks like us. This permanence we share is what we write, the scars and tongue our own. The secret letters link our here and there, inscribe a life caught tight between the lines and lies of someone's louder voice. And yet the narrative will out. The past, both mine and yours, will tell its days of deep duress and live to type another self. We claim one life rewrites the rest, but they're the same. And then I'll end with this one, Alzheimer's Obad. She wakes to gray, no words to guide the way towards sun. His unfamiliar face seems kind enough. She nods hello. Just yesterday she knew his eyes, but now? This morning's mind welcomes the past, but not the day. She was someone, woman who woke at 3 to sing her restless son to sleep. His calm her cause for celebration. Today the dawn brings no clarity, yet still the stranger comes and draws her curtains wide. She thinks outside is where she left her life, daughters, a son who meet sunrise without her. Look, the light is brighter now. The kind man helps her stand. To see the morning sun, she takes his hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marjorie. That was beautiful and fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And we're going to have 2 more open mic readers before our final feature. The next one will be Chris O'Carroll. Chris, if you could unmute.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Unmute myself.
Yeah,
yes,
you're
I'm
okay.
unmuted. Okay. This is a poem that I wrote after visiting my grandmother's native village on the Helvig Head Peninsula. So if Rebecca, if you've had it up to here with Irish Americans on roots pilgrimages, please forgive me for doing what I can't help doing here. This is the title of this poem is the name of the village, Ballinagal, County Waterford. A graybeard and a girl walk on this beach. She's his grandmother. She's not really here. He stoops for shells and pebbles. His hands reach across a family's distances and years. Of her 11 children, 3 are left. his father, and 2 aunts back in the States. He pockets bits of Ireland, reverend theft of relics for her blood to venerate. She lost 2 brothers here, both fishermen who toiled daily on this chill gray sea that one day failed to bring them home again. That's when her girlhood ended. That's when she booked passage for her children's native land. She's not here. She can't hold her grandson's hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Let's see, and next will be Harvey. Soss could unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fine. I'm going to read a poem that sort of stuck in my mind because I was working on something about October 7th, and this is the second time this week that I've read it. His name was Yitzhak. As her father was being dragged away, casually marked off a checklist, his fated elegance not strong enough for forced labor at Daimler-Benz, his card stamped with a fatted calf's expiration date, his defiant Shema in all likelihood having pissed off a guard, he called out to her, "Remember my name, child," his last words to her. That she had survived was a miracle in itself, only years later able to purchase with her totemically American credit card a lampshade without experiencing the usual feelings of scorpions climbing her spine, the fear it was some friend of hers whose skin had been flayed. If the Allied troops had waited just one more day to advance, their sanitizing tanks and trucks mired down in the mud, or engaged in suppressing skirmishers who stood in their way, rear guard Aryans whose blonde hair and stiff salutes made them easy targets. Camp liberators might have found her remains, those of a gymnast whose cartwheeling early promise had high-barred by the age of 10. Positioned atop a pommel of bones as if vaulting to freedom. A thumbs down discard among the discarded, a rack of ribs with no meat on them, with not even a child of her own to remember her. Having decamped in Bronx, New York after the war, she endures this Holocaust Remembrance Day as she has before, parentless, alone, her grown children too busy with their lives. No mother dreidel spinning in a new dress to burst through the door with honey cake and such a mischievous smile. No father, second generation furrier to the rich, preening in his fur coat to drum up business, well regarded by Jews and Gentiles alike despite his Jewishness, as the Goyim forever angling for pure blood discounts were it pains to remind him. Collaborators smug in their forbearance. She has since felt herself half-baked, a pastry snatched from the oven too soon. How was a girl not having bled supposed to become a woman without a mother, hair done up in a bun, to pat her on the head, urge her to finish her homework, point her in the right direction, be her cottage compass? This night she will light a candle in their names, say a prayer in Aramaic, a curse in English, the latter with a bitter taste. On this day of remembrance, she remembers them all, father, mother, sister, brother, their hurtful truth, but her father especially calling out to her, "Remember my name, child." His name was Yitzhak, hers Ruth, Americanized to Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Our last feature today is Ralph Adamo. He teaches English at Xavier University, where he edits the Xavier Review and the Xavier Review Press. He's been, in fact, editing journals since the 1970s. And he's published, 8 books of poetry, including Ever, Poems 2000 to 2014, and All the Good Hiding Places. And he's got a 9th one that should be coming out, hopefully, soon. And he's won many fellowships and awards, and still had time to have other careers as a journalist, in network writing for network television, and certain stints as a vocalist for a spoken word band. So let's welcome Ralph Adamo.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me into this community of poets. It's really been a great pleasure to hear what you all have been writing, to see your faces as you read them. This is good. I need to do this more often. Thank you. Anyway, and this is an older issue of Xavier Review, but I wanted to say, since I have all these poets here as a captive audience, we accept a lot of poetry. It sounds like, I would be very interested in, having any of you all send me some work to look at. You can find us online. This is Xavier University in New Orleans, not the basketball school, although we have a basketball team. Anyway, yeah. So I wanted to start with a couple of poems from a selected volume, Waterblind, which came out in 2002. The first poem is, actually, I wrote it in 1972, I think. So, and I was asked to tell a bedtime story by someone I had just met, and I couldn't think of one. So the next day I wrote this. The story about the tiger who spoke French. Once upon a time, the tiger sat in a tree and didn't do anything. Leaves, and then blossoms came. The water hearts of the apples grew. When the apples were picked, the tiger was polished and sent with the rest to market. In his own heart, he could not hear the water beat. When his mouth opened so he could die, many apples fell in. They fell all the way to his stomach, which took them like a princess taking love. When the apple sellers set up their baskets on the roadside, he ate them too, and a customer. That afternoon, he was painted by an artist along a leafy pond side in the city park, where he was also stroked by young girls in the uniforms of a convent school. A student discussed Rilke with him. From the far edge of the green, he heard music more perfect than any strain of the apple winds or the loose talk of birds. He watched a baseball game. Two lovers hustled him for change. In the late afternoon, he heard church bells and dined on an old woman asleep beside two little children. At dusk, he bought cotton candy and spat apple seeds and rings at the monkeys in the zoo. Later, he wandered down to the river where I was. He read some of my poems. He spoke French with my pretty wife. And the next one from this old book is actually, I wrote it in 1996, but it refers to an event in 1974 that most of you will remember, I think. It's called By His Appearance. This is, I was actually watching the Republican convention in 1996, and by his appearance in San Diego, a former president recalls the bringing together of father and son, is the title. Seeing that nearly blank square of a face from which issue those flat, subcommon words, I am reminded of the flare of optimism this flotsam hack once ignited in the smoke-filled and divided American heart of my father. So bright, if briefly, I got a call all the way to the little room in Arkansas where I sat stoned, returning to the broadcast charades of the powerful, my own unamplified blankness. Was the word soul used, the phrase dark night of, by this man whose very head appears to be a helmet? Who can remember? But this I know. My father called out of the wide blue of the road to cheer the shrill, broken note of Nixon's passing, to ask me if I thought it would be better now, be okay. Didn't I feel dissonance lifting, disgust taking a break, at least a hint of a blue sky of morning. I held my breath, but maybe only to attenuate the toke, and shook my head. We can't give up our pessimism now, I said, and we did not. I have a my third cold of the week. So again, I have no idea what to read. This is from This Is Ever, published by Lavender Ink in 2014. And I'm just going to read a couple of poems from this book. Most summers, the last 15 or so years, I do a month teaching in the summer in a camp for creative kids. I teach creative writing to them, and we teachers live in the dorm with these are kids from like 12 to 16. And sometimes the boys got pretty noisy down the hall. So they made me write this poem. It's called A Prayer for Boys. Adolescent boys are so lost. 1,000 years of diligent searching might turn up a clue just. But bravely, they go out into each new day without the fears of old men or girls, and shout their location to a universe that might care less if it could. Lost and wandering, boys arrive at manhood with fanfare and surprise, still shouting, but not as loud, beating a drum they have found, arrayed in clothes that do not fit them. We should all shed a tear for the boy. As beautiful as he is now, that is how badly he will die. Give him some room, a head start, the map in your tentative fingers, a sign, oh, something he can refer to. But you will give the boy nothing but grief. He is where his heart can be all the time until his heart leaves him. Still he shouts, the sound doubling itself, unambiguous joy. Yes, world without hearing. Amen. There's a sequence in here that I don't know why I titled it Solipsisms, but that's its title. And this is the first part of that sequence. This is from early in the 2000s. I'll just read that one and move on to the last book. This is the so the first part of Solipsisms. Although we have no right to hurt one another, this poem yanks you out of your chair with one hand and slaps you silly with the other, all the while saying, see, it didn't have to come to this. We could have chosen justice over property. The heart's idea of what's right over the idea of form when two heads or more get together and make a plan. We could have all said all at once, but wait, there are people starving and we have silos full of grain. Maybe if we all had been naive all at once, all together, we could have rolled this planet over on its back and tickled its belly till it yelled, okay, stop, I'll confess. Economics is a vast and complicated excuse for injustice. Pride makes fools of us all. And moreover, love really isn't that hard once you decide to tell the truth and hang on to it. Damn, I mean, there is enough. How many houses do you need? How many choices of soap? How much of a lead over the rest of us before you feel safe? We could just say, well, I'm in. What needs to be done? Instead of running for the cover of sophistication and distinction, church or state. Actually, one more sort of short thing to show that I can rhyme. And the last poem in the book is kind of a jazz poem, I guess, in the sense that it does a lot of different things and does them dissonantly. But anyway, this is part of it. We walk and try to talk. We talk and try to walk. We take the dog or not. The dog would rather trot. Taking a full breath of air, I wonder why, I wonder where I came to love so much, breathing in and out. In such simple tasks, they barely count as actions, memory, or care. The eye will blink, the tongue share, the wretched heart dismount, memorial and slow, until so simplified it fades from sound. but aching arms and legs are bound to keep us on the go. Ho, ho. I break the reader's contract, no? The universe is useless form until the black cat comes to rest upon his long-lost lover's breast. And there we are, depending shade, cruel customers, loud wintry blade, domesticating evidence last, a glimmer predeceasing past. And I don't really, this is the cover of All the Good Hiding Places, a photograph by a really wonderful New Orleans photographer, Josephine Sacco. And I'm just going to try to this is called The Bulge. And again, I appreciate having an audience that's over 30 because I don't have to explain what the Battle of the Bulge was. But my father was in it. My father should have had better, is what I think. It's what I've always thought. It's my complaint, not his. I never heard him grouse about his fate, his lot, the kind of things men whine about, reeling in their catch in greedy spurts. My father was calm, even when provoked, measured, a battuta at least, an andante. Mud is bad enough if you're naturally neat, and coal that slices thin cuts in your soul. Put the two together and add gunfire, razor wire, mortars, blowing trees to kingdom come, no toothbrush, socks wet for days on end. Inside of shoes, there is no one to mend. The inside of the brain wavers and wins, but isolation crowds discomfort. Misery corners the rocky landscape, star-burned. I try to picture my old man as an old man, my friends all passing my father's final age, like travelers past an unseen stone. My father who dug holes in French dirt, or was it German? No one knew anything except the wind tore the flesh from their faces, except the chill was like weeds blooming in the blood from feet all the way up to ears, except who could feel their ears? The ice spoke each man's name slowly, crystallized in one eyeball after another, except face down in the dirt was blind luck, except a man was repeating his mother's name, and it was the same as the name of the man's mother next to him, in the dirt that had no country carved into it, or had none, or would have. My father turns from the barbed wire where hangs the flesh of who knows whom, or from which side hangs like rags this flesh, still damp, still marked by small cuts and dirt dripping from the wire like paper mache drying, a still life sliced from irony. I don't know if I have any time. I did not time myself well.
Okay, we have a little time. We have a lot of time.
Do we?
Oh,
Well, I won't take too much advantage. If I might, then maybe one more from this book and one from the book that I hope I'm finished writing because I'm tired of writing it. But this one has a title that you all will also probably recognize, except that I misheard it all these years. It's called Dream, Comfort, Memory. It should be To Spare, but I've always heard Despair. Anyway, so it's called Dream, Comfort, Memory, Despair. I can see the tops of trees from 1,000 feet, covered by blue salt, through which, raining, I fall. There is something hot breaking our bones. The flowers don't help, waving like tiny red corals at the bottom of the sea. Love is coming, disguised, brittle as oyster shell in the sun, torn like a flyer or the poor man's shirt, or a guitar riff strung out past the known galaxies. Face it is the worst advice. Would a monarch take it? Affirmative growl from underground notwithstanding, which stands on its own. The vibration hurts, my fall, my hand stretches to the wind. Okay, and one last one. This is, thank you for the indulgence. This is a poem dedicated to my late, very late now, friend Everett Maddox, a poet I hope that you all have heard of, who passed away in 1989, and whose selected poems I edited, and they're available from UNO Press, and they're really quite wonderful. He's a great poet. Anyway, this is called One More Summer Storm, which is the end of one of his last poems where he says, thinking of the things he doesn't want to leave behind when he dies, wait, wait, wait. One more summer storm would be nice. Anyway, one more summer storm for Rhett. Fathers go early, people vanish. There may be a stone or a pot of ash, the air, the sky. I will vanish. I don't like this. The other side of being alive, tasting the world, holding the hand, hugging the body, joining it even. I don't like leaving this half of things, too much unfinished, not begun, left in the mind where it did no good at all. There might be a pot of ashes. Your friends might stumble to the river, flop through mud and grit, and drop the ashes so the river takes them. The river that doesn't need any more ash or any more fathers or sons. It has its own life, both sides of one. People vanish. You want to keep the image clear, but the image does not want clarity or cannot write itself, which is just as well as people vanish. Fathers often first, as it happens. The taste of river water, the breeze that rolls on the river's belly, the stone that it will gather. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ralph.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's everyone unmute. Thank Ralph Adamo for yeah, a truly superb reading. And also our other features today then. Rebecca O'Connor, Marjorie Maddox. It's really been wonderful. That will conclude our reading today.